So, welcome. You're attending a webinar presented by Approval Max. Today, Tyler Caskey is joining me to discuss the topic: Does finance automation really improve accuracy and reduce fraud? By attending this session, you'll gain insights on how automation can improve financial processes, common vulnerabilities that expose small businesses to fraud, risk strategies, risk reduction strategies, key warning signs about invoice scams, practical methods to detect and prevent invoice scams, and then to round it off, we're going to share what we're looking forward to at Brisbane Xerocon. So towards the end of the session, we'll have time for Q&A, but I do ask if you do have any questions, pop them into the Q&A area. We'll also monitor the chat area. So Tyler, can I pass over to you? Can you let the audience know who you are, why you're here today for this discussion about enhancing accuracy and preventing fraud through automation?
Thanks, Heather. It's good to be here. And yeah, we at the Bean Counters run a business of about 9 people that help organizations and accounting firms install and use good tech. Part of that process for us is definitely assisting them choosing like good fraud prevention technologies that, help approval of invoices and also the payment of invoices. My background is I'm a chartered accountant in business services and was a financial controller and CFO before coming back into consulting in 2020.
Fantastic. So to let people know a little bit about me, I am a chartered accountant as well. I'm a certified bookkeeper and BAS agent. I've run a management accounting practice, digital practice for close to 2 decades now, specializing in navigating the business app ecosystem. And as many of you will know, I produce a newsletter, podcast, and I nurture a community focused on discussions around accounting apps. So I do encourage you, but all to connect with Tyler and I on LinkedIn, and I'll pop our links in the chat area in a second. But that's enough about me. Now I do have a question for everyone to answer. Do you think I'm going to pop it in the chat area. Do you think that your small business clients' current finance processes could be improved through automations? That's just a quick yes or no answer there. And let's jump into that discussion, Tyler, and talk about how automation can improve financial processes. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, my answer to that is easily yes. I'm seeing a big gap in the market between businesses that adopt the technology quickly and use it versus the ones that are slow to pick it up. A couple of the larger businesses I'm working with at the moment are nervous about, taking a piece of technology and installing it into their business for accounts payable or credit cards or debit cards. And I to me, these are very much almost, I'd call them no-brainer systems because, we've been working in models using emails, using, CEOs and head of sales signing invoices for the last 20 years. And they're just not as reliable as, a highly automated system. And for me, I'm seeing businesses that A, want to reduce fraud, but B, want to improve like the efficiency of the finance team and also like the efficiency of the operations team that have to, participate in getting invoices, getting them through finance, getting them approved and paid. And for me, I cannot express enough how much that this automation piece is a safety net for the finance team, not just an efficiency piece.
Absolutely. And when you put a solution in, it puts in structures and it puts in processes that may have been missed out through an evolution of a finance team. So, do you have any real world examples that you'd like to share about how automation has improved that financial process?
Yeah, we're at the moment we're just finishing a project with a 9 entity group, which is um, like quite large here in Sydney, and puts I'd say around $50 million worth of invoices, through their business each year, and they're now an Approval Max customer after they moved to Xero as well. For them, one of their bookkeepers or their senior bookkeeper, her sentence was like, I love Approval Max because what it did for her was automated the follow-ups, the chases, and also the OCRs of invoices, and it really put a structure around an invoicing process that has been manual. She's been in the job for about 20 years. That has been manual for a long, long time. And it also enabled, that piece of audit trail. So, when the boss or the CEO or the head of finance, wanted to know who approved this and when, she had such a really easy answer when instead of going through emails and chasing those things is a big difference to her job. How about you? Have you seen anything in the market that, or any clients or businesses that have, had a win here?
Look, I think in terms of what you've just said there is really interesting in that there's savings up the front and then there's savings at the back end of actually hadn't ever thought about that, the chasing up of where a approval has actually come from. And it's kind of really interesting about the time saving efficiency. So look, you did ask me that question, but in terms of her, she'd been in that job 20 years. What sort of time saving efficiencies did she have from software implementation?
Yeah. I think the two sides are like the interconnectivity of it. So now that there is Xero client and an Approval Max client, and they've got other apps like Mayday and Power BI and such, is her efficiency is like on the data entry. So they use the OCR part of Approval Max, which is a big win for them. And that just speeds up like the entering of the data. But the second one is instead of doing emails and chasing up and having to remember where these are, it moved her time cost in that middle part of instead of trying to move those things through her approval team. And I
Yeah.
don't want to hassle operations people too hard because I've been one, like I've been a CFO that had to approve invoices. But if I knew an invoice and I knew the amount and like it was the same rent payment as last time, it was pretty easy. Yes, sure, that's approved. But I know I sat on invoices when I had, I wasn't 100% sure. And for her, like that middle part of the follow up and chase up, I think has been really like the biggest win on it as well.
Yeah, yeah. And you do put those invoices aside. So all the easy ones go through and you kind of just leave them and leave them, leave them, which impacts the relationship with your clients if you are slowing down the payment of invoices. So
Yeah.
I have another question for the audience. Just answer very shortly, very shortly, 2 or 3 words. What could leave your clients open to fraud? And let's move to that discussion. What are some of the common vulnerabilities that you see exposing small businesses to fraud? And what can be done to reduce that risk?
For me, like the easy one is if emails get hacked. And this happened to me in 2019. I was the CFO in a design business, and I was fighting not fighting, but like pushing really hard to try to get two-factor authentication in on our business. And we managed to roll it out in our Sydney team, but we didn't manage to get it out nationwide because there was a bit of some nerves about too much change too quick. And one of our studio directors, their emails got hacked, and someone sat in his emails for about 2 months. And that process for me was around the vulnerabilities of just username and passwords, right? And Microsoft's got a lot tighter on two-factor authentication, but it's still not mandatory across all businesses. And watching that, as this hacker effectively came in, or it wasn't a hacker, it was just someone who guessed the username and password. They started going through his emails, finding invoice trends, and sending them to a lady in my team for payment. And what they did is took known suppliers, edited the PDF, changed the bank details, and then sent them to my team with urgent, could you pay now? And luckily, like my team member she was absolutely on it. She's now like a manager at Mazars, and she quickly sniffed out that the wording wasn't quite right. And she asked me, like we were sitting 2 seats away, she asked me, hey, there's something kind of feels off. And so what I learned there is that it's not just like how the invoices get approved and paid, it's also about all the functions around how invoices get into the system and who has access to those types of plays. So, yes, you've got to have two-factor authentication on your emails, but also like, putting them through like a proper approval process, that especially if it's a large invoice that has to go to, say, a director and then to the CEO, to me is such a safe bet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the rollout of AI, the volume of fraud, the potential fraud and scams that we're seeing has grown because it's so easy for people to do it. I think literally in the last 24 hours, I've received multiple emails, multiple text messages, WhatsApp messages demanding payments that are all spam. And I know they're spam, so I just put them there. One of the things that I've started now getting is this is a voice message via email for you. And I'm like going, wow, they're just coming out with more and more and more things. And having procedures in place is so important. And one of the other things that I kind of wanted to touch on was sometimes it is blatant opportunity. If the systems aren't in there, then sometimes someone's in a vulnerable position and they go, I can actually do something here to get money out of this system. And they do it and they perhaps wouldn't have done, and they're perhaps a really good person, but putting processes in place stops that temptation for blatant opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. And Thea Williams in the chat put in there about credit cards as well. And for a couple businesses, having an approval process on credit card reimbursements is really important. So like that, if you're like someone has a personal credit card and they need to load those transactions for reimbursement, we've been putting those through Approval Max. But also the other one I've found is we've had a few entities where their credit cards have been hacked as well. Like one of the older CEOs, yeah, it kind of sucked and it cost about $55,000. The older CEO had a reused password, and the credit card was being loaded onto, in my opinion, too many websites. And I think that's a big movement in the market as well about how credit card charges, are a lot more vulnerable as well. And that's why I'm really liking virtual credit cards at the moment, because it just restricts that limit, of how much people can pay, and it's a bit easier to dispute transactions. That I think is something in the next 10 years we're going to see a big, big change to.
So you're putting the individual purchase of a credit card. So maybe it is conference tickets. You're putting that through Approval Max. You're not putting the final credit card bill through Approval Max.
If it's their personal card, we will put the whole credit card transaction, because usually let's say it's a $50,000 payment,
Yeah.
but it was a $60,000 credit card bill because 10,000 is personal. So we'll ask them to put the $50,000 credit card
Yeah.
monthly charge onto Approval Max for approvals. And that's where it can code out quite easily. Like we don't
Mm.
get them to it's pretty hard to attach all those invoices in one hit, but it's still a nice approval process. Because I have seen in my time, especially in law firms, and I don't want to hassle lawyers too much because they are very usually very ethical in the way they spend money. If I'm being honest, like they're very good. But I have seen one or two lawyers in my time like push through, expenses that if they'd been identified to say their managing director or managing partner, they wouldn't have done so. So yeah, using Approval Max for some of those are great, but also, if we can use virtual cards for those, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yes. So that's sort of some really good insight there. And along with that, you mentioned older people in the workforce, we need to be talking about password management solutions in terms of our password protection and have whatever that may be. I personally use 1Password. There's Practice Protect out there. And this is a conversation I think as accountants and bookkeepers we actually need to be having with our clients because we understand this, we see it happening. We need to say, hey, passwords need to be protected, even though it can be tedious and repetitive.
Yeah. The other one, so a few people mentioned up was about changes to bank accounts too. Like that one's super risky and it's really an internal potential cost is, if and everyone's heard the stories of a bookkeeper that's, changing invoice numbers or invoice, bank account details to their own and shipping that money out. Like the real risk there for me is like single touch. So, if you've got one person that can approve an invoice or receive an invoice, approve an invoice and pay an invoice, that's just like an absolute no-go.
Mm.
I've always found segregation of duties is really important on invoice payments. And that's where like a system with Approval Max, it's pretty hard to defraud those because you can fake emails pretty easily. And I think Approval Max, if you do change a bank account details or you change an invoice after it's been entered, it gives the admins a notification as well that something's been changed. Um, which is pretty handy. And I think Approval Max has got bank account detail changes in there now too.
I'll double check on that one. Now, the other, I think, highlight of what you said there was the fraud cost them 55K.
Yeah.
And one of the conversations having with the clients is, okay, what is their sort of spend that is going through currently? And this solution is going to save you money rather than cost you money because if you get to sleep at night and not worry about many cases those accidental outpayments happening.
Yeah, and no one's immune to it at the moment. Like myself personally, I've even paid, a payment that I shouldn't have, like that ended up being fraud, and lost a new barbecue purchase, right? And but even on the worst case scenario, like I've had friends that were financial controllers in role, and one of them sent $75,000 to Singapore because they got a fake email from a CEO, their CEO, but they changed some of the names briefly, and so he acted on that email and on this invoice when the CEO was away in Singapore, so someone just knew that it happened. And if that had gone through like an approval structure that wasn't email and that was audit trailed and logged in, it would have been caught pretty damn quick.
Yeah, oh, so painful, so painful, so un-Australian to cause you fraud on your barbecue purchase.
Yeah, I know. I learnt my lesson on it. At least it was only $300 and not 3,000.
I've popped into the chat. The Australian government offers free cyber warden training for small businesses, and there's 2 hours of training which you get CPD for that can help you spot issues, and you can do it yourself, and you can encourage your small business clients to use it. Fantastic.
Heather, can I throw one at you?
Yeah,
One of the
absolutely.
key things for fraud that's happening lately is a lot of people are calling to confirm bank account details for new suppliers. Me personally, I don't love the efficiency of that process. Like, I think that could be automated. And I know that BSB and account numbers, like I got a notification from ANZ that BSB account numbers and names are starting to be connected, right? So if someone's paying the bean counters and they've got the wrong number, it's harder to do. What's your opinion on like where the market will go in that? Calling to check bank account details. Do you reckon that's going to be automated or we're still going to be doing that human touch?
If it's automated with a robot, I don't think I'll be responding to it. I did actually have a call recently, which I was surprised about, and it was a legal office, but it was all sort of legit and tied in with it. But yeah, no, I don't like the thought of putting my information out towards a robot. So yeah, but I can see
Yeah.
it growing. Um, And I can see it being kind of an issue. And I think that's about all the security. Now, one of the things that's interesting is I bank with ANZ and I went to make a payment. The last few weeks when I've gone to make a payment, it actually comes up and says, the payer you're paying is this person and the names match or the names don't match. Can you go and check? So that's good. That's good. They're trying. We're trying. I'm trying.
I think I think the banks are going to have to lead this as well. Like the accuracy of payments, like we've always had pretty good accuracy of BPay. However, it's so prone to typing errors, right? Like if we
Mm.
pick the right 6 digits and it says, hey, you're paying, AGL electricity, it will pull up AGL, but like the customer reference number is pretty open. But I do think that BSB and account number, I think the biggest move we're going to have in the market is a connection between invoices, suppliers, and account numbers, all going to be verified and mastered. And, like there are some apps that are kind of playing with that, but I know like Approval Max is, that's like an easy next step for them because such a, they've got such a plethora of invoices there and scan data that, that connection back to the banks is, I think, something that really will restrict our fraud chances.
I don't understand why the banks can't give us far more information for every transaction because surely they know the location, the time it went through, the details of it. That it shocks me that almost on a weekly basis I have to look up because I'm like, where on earth did this happen? And I can figure it out, but why that's not coming through because that's just more information for us, which is a good thing and prevents fraud and helps us understanding where the money is actually going.
Yeah, and I know they're trying as well. They're just on archaic systems. Like the banks have to move so slow. I think the movement to e-invoicing, that the ATO is pushing will be a good introduction to this
Yes.
because
Yeah.
we're going to have less typing. Um, and James has put in there things about like EFT Shore doing bank account confirmations. Like I've had to
Mm.
do a lot of those as well in my business to confirm bank account details, and I just think that's going to become the market standard of where it's going to happen because you can OCR an invoice, but also like, really verifying that those systems, have the right invoice number and are paying the right people, I think is the key.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I have another question for our audience. It's a yes or no question, so hopefully quite easy. Would you be confident in detecting and stopping an invoice scam? So let's see what they think about that. And so this is kind of moving on. We've kind of touched on it, but third area I'd like to cover with you, Tyler, is key warnings that you see around invoice scams and how are you detecting them and how are you preventing them? So we have slightly touched on them in terms of
Yeah.
you've talked about changes to invoices, changes to the information on it, phone calls. Is there anything else there that you that you
I
you want to talk about?
Absolutely. Like, I like Nicole's answer there somewhat, right? Like, no one's perfect here, I think, is the play. And one thing I never want to be is confident that I'm always going to pick it up, right? Like, I've always learned in businesses, so I'll talk probably like businesses and also accounting firms, right? So, a business, if you've got a finance team, the number one thing you need to do is talk to your team about and train them about that someone at some time will try to defraud the business and it's our job to pick it up. It will be a fake email, it will be a fake invoice, or it'd be a fake phone call, or someone will hack into one of the systems at some stage and load something, right? I still haven't seen a two-factor authentication app get hacked with invoices, but I'm sure that will happen. So number one is creating like that dialogue and an awareness that they need to be aware that people will try to hack it. Number two is looking at the wording of emails and the wording of invoices. So I always say, if the email says, Heather, please pay this invoice immediately, like you need to question it as the play
Mm.
and just have a level of skepticism about why is this urgent? And then the third one, and I've said this to finance teams for, I think, 15 years, is could you stand up in front of the entire management team or the entire board and say, I know what this invoice is for and what service or good the business got. So in my mind, if we're buying, 20 new chairs for the Adelaide office, right? Do I know that the Adelaide office is going through a refurbishment? Do I know, have I heard anything about this happening? And if I'm not, have I talked to maybe the Adelaide office manager to make sure that's happened? And that ability, I always say to them, could you stand up and do it? Could you stand up and say,
Mm.
and it doesn't matter if it's $50 or $50,000, could you, hold that true and stand up in front of that room? And that to me is like, if they can handle that, then they can pay, get that invoice through the payment process.
Yeah. And I guess it's in terms of handling that and knowing clearly and quickly where to find that information,
Yeah.
if that is actually the case. Excellent. So, um, we have some stats on this area that I thought I would share, and if you want to comment on them. So I think it's always interesting to draw out stats when we're having these sorts of conversation. So in Australia, payment redirection scams, that includes fake invoices, caused $277 million in loss in 2023. And it was the highest category of scam loss, according to ACCC Scam Watch.
Mhm. It's so worrying. Like 277 million is high. And I'd love um, to dig into those stats around. My bet would be it's probably some of the larger organizations that have distributed finance teams or are not using good apps that have had those types of scams because they're running on a high volume kind of process.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Um, 80 to 90% of finance errors are due to human error in our manual processes. And that comes from Gartner 2023. So 90% of finance errors just due to human error. Yikes.
Yeah, agreed. And that's I think it can be like typos on
Yeah.
invoices. Like I've made typos on invoices, so I double check those numbers as well. But also like typos of like bank account details. Like we've all made a bad BSB payment or a bad, account number and it's bounced back. And even certain things like I'm finding, superannuation funds and super payments are getting like some bounce backs more and more,
Mm.
especially as things like merge and those types of things. So, when people are typing in, their own super funds, like, or if the finance team's processing a super form, like those changes, like, no one's perfect in these types of activities.
No. No, absolutely. Um, and the final stat that we had here was organizations with proactive anti-fraud controls, which includes automated approvals and regular data monitoring, detect fraud 50% faster and have a 50% lower median loss. And that was the ACFE 2024 report. So I think that's really important, the detecting of the fraud as quick as possible. It may happen. The faster you detect it, the faster you can do something about it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Like, especially if you put it on a credit card, credit cards and PayPal are very easy to get. Not easy, but it's easier to get money back than like a debit card or a bank account. Um,
Yeah.
but the other one I think about there is like I'm a big fan of standing approvals and contract lengths. So, a good example is like I always managed kind of like facilities in my CFO role. So I managed, rent payments for up to like 20 offices. I managed, like car park payments, insurances, all those types of things. And so those monthly costs, I gave my team, like standing approval for a level of rent, right? So, it always gets fun when they do catch ups on outgoings and those things change. But you can get really smart with approvals now about who can approve what. And this is what I like about Approval Max's tiered system, is I can say, if it's under this amount and it's to this supplier and it's a monthly, then that can go straight through the bookkeeper and then I just do the ABA payment at the end. But the second one there is if you are automating those smaller recurring payments, you've got more time to look at like the payments that need attention because those funky ones that if you're buying $500,000 I think of my biggest payment was a $22 million payment, right, in the law firm. I checked every single number twice, and I even got my 2IC to come in and like make sure that we were doing those payments correctly. And like double checking those numbers, it needed more attention because it wasn't just the standing,
Yeah.
payment. Um,
What on
the
earth was costing $22 million? dollars?
law firm property settlements and all that type of fun stuff. Yeah, I think it was a property purchase between a super fund and another one, and we were acting for one side.
Yikes.
I was
I
just
would be
behind the scenes.
freaking out. I would be freaking out.
There was
Um,
a room full of people in a boardroom waiting for me to give them a payment number, which didn't come quickly. So I wasn't freaking out, but I knew there was pressure. So
Excellent. I encourage everyone who's listening in, if you do have any questions for Tyler and I, please pop them in the chat area regarding what we've been talking about. And I've just popped in our LinkedIn handle so you can connect with us there. Now, I'd like to shift gear and wrap this up by talking about Brisbane Xerocon, which is in like 21 days, I think. So
it is.
what are you looking what are you looking forward to regarding Xerocon, Tyler?
Yeah, for me, I love the part of Xerocon where I can sniff test a lot of apps in a short period of time and also really understand some of the roadmaps of the app. So I always spend my first day like trying to get around as many as I can until my battery runs out and try yeah, it happens to all of us. Try to if there's any new apps, try to understand what they do and what they service they provide. And then if there's some really good talks, there's some good partner stage talks at the moment. I'm very keen on what the Xero is planning in the next 5 years. As they've been quite, there's been a lot of acquisitions and a lot of movement and changes in that. So I want to see what Xero is looking at, on things like fraud and payments, because these things are becoming so rife in the market. How is the base finance systems looking at that? And then the last one for me is there's some partner stages. Like one of our good friends, Natalie Lennon, is doing, like business growth. And I think some of those smaller partner stages, I think are going to have good information as well.
I think the partner stages are where it's going to be at because the partners are there to share just pure insight and there's no call to action, there's no sign up to my course, it's pure insight. And we should mention that you are going to be hosting one of the partner stages as well, Tyler. So I'll be there, and I'm sure that will be a popular session. So please look out for that on your agenda and make sure it's locked into your calendar.
Well,
Um,
thanks. What about you, Heather? What are you looking forward to at Xerocon? Because I know it's in your hometown.
Yes, it's in Brisbane. So very excited about that. I always look forward to connecting with the community. And I've popped in a Facebook group that everyone who's going to Brisbane Xerocon has been joining. Um, I along with you, encourage everyone if you're attending, pace yourself, reserve your energy. If you are a first time attendee, I encourage you to wear an orange bracelet. If you're first time or if you're attending on your own, and we're kind of passing out the messages. If they're first time attending on your own, we're going to encourage people to come up and say hello to you. You want someone to say hello to you. Um, and it is in my hometown, and I want to remind you that public transport in Brisbane is 50 cents. So wherever you are and whatever you're doing, look at getting around on public transport, 50 cents, cheap as chips. And the river is beautiful. So you can just jump into one of the city cats and take a trip down the river. I mean, in terms of recharging yourself, Tyler, you could get out of the hall, get on a river cat and have a nice trip and then come back within an hour, and it will just be so you're so refreshed and it's just lovely on that river.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's important as well. Like, just don't overdo it. Make sure your day job stays, happening as well. If you're, especially if you're an accounting firm partner or manager or accountant there too.
Yeah, but I think both Tyler and I've got a small speaking slot, and you've got a big speaking slot. Come see us talk, connect with us there. We really look forward to that. Also, Approval Max will have a stand there, so if you want to ask them more questions about this session that we've just had, or anything about the solution, please go and visit them. They also will have. I don't know if I'm supposed to tell you. I know what the swag is. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to tell you or not. But they've got some cool swag that you can go and say hello to them and maybe collect some cool swag from them. So, I'll tell you secretly, Nicole. Now, is there anyone? Does anyone have any more questions? Doesn't look like it. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Tyler, before I wrap this up?
Yeah, just for me, especially if you're an accounting firm doing outsourced bookkeeping or outsourced CFO in this market, I've I've had some really good businesses not use technology well for their accounts payable process. And I think something, especially if you're doing a lot of bookkeeping and managing payments for clients, which is happening a bit more in the market, definitely use an approval process. Like, don't
Mm.
rely on emails anymore. Don't rely on best guess, especially as businesses grow, like the attention to detail gets less. So I think, always look at that risk reduction process in an app like Approval Max and Xero, but then also look at it from an efficiency side as well. So like, businesses get a big advantage from this, and that's where we do a lot of our work. But also like accounting firms, if you're processing bills, this is such a no-brainer of a product.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as an accountant or bookkeeper, we have deep awareness of this area. We we need to take leadership in this area and inform our clients about what is possible and what is best practice. And you don't necessarily need to do the implementation yourself. The other thing that accountants and bookkeepers are great at is we've got a good network, build a good network, and you might tap in someone to actually do the implementation. Tyler was telling me before we started, when we were in the green room, that Approval Max is one of the favorite solutions in terms of time wise to implement. I think, is that what you were saying? It was easy to implement.
Yeah, we can actually do an implementation in under 2 hours, like for a group of entities. Whereas if you're a single entity, like it's pretty much from start to finish within an hour, depending on the size of the business and how many people need to approve. But like building an approval flow, like we can actually do it on screen with a client within about 5 to 10 minutes, if that.
Mm.
And it's really about, you don't need extensive payment policies and approval policies. You just need the ability to go, Timmy needs to approve invoices over 5,000 and Sarah needs to approve invoices over 50,000, and then etc. from there. So it's really simple to make.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tyler. I'd like to thank Tyler Caskey for joining me today. I'd like to thank everyone at Approval Max, with special mention to Rochelle Bevis, who assisted in the development and production of this webinar. I encourage everyone to connect with us on LinkedIn, and you shall receive a follow-up email with further information about Approval Max. Come and say hi to us at Xerocon, and I hope the rest of your day is fraud-free.
Okay. Thanks, Heather. Good to talk.
Thank you.